Karen thought we'd fold. She marched up our driveway with her clipboard, barking orders like she owned the street, waving fake fines and threats like she was some kind of sheriff. What she didn't know was that my wife wasn't just another polite homeowner. She was trained, calm under pressure, and already had a federal injunction signed and sealed. And when Karen tried to push through our gate, my wife didn't flinch. She locked it shut, stepped forward, and dropped the legal warrant right in Karen's stunned lap. She didn't see it coming, but she felt every word on that paper hit like a hammer. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below, because this one gets personal. I always thought home was supposed to feel safe, permanent, like a place where you could breathe easy and shut the world out. But on that Tuesday morning, I watched from the porch as my wife, barefoot, calm, hair still damp from the shower, stepped past the front gate, slid a folded document from a manila folder, and handed it directly to the woman screaming at us over the fence. She didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch, just handed Karen the warrant like she was delivering a wedding invitation. And when the gate shut with that final click behind her, I realized something. Karen hadn't just picked the wrong house. She had picked the wrong woman to intimidate. But to understand how we got to that moment, how a quiet couple with no interest in drama ended up legally cornering an entire HOA, you have to rewind 2 months. Back to the first day we moved into what we thought would be our forever home. It was a quiet neighborhood, maybe too quiet. We bought the house at the end of Briar Ridge Lane, cul-de-sac, 3 oaks in the front, wrap-around porch. My wife, Lauren, fell in love with it the moment she saw the arched kitchen window and the old barn out back. Said it reminded her of her grandparents' home in Southern Virginia. Something about it made her shoulders drop, like she could finally exhale. We'd just finished 11 years of bouncing around, military housing, rental apartments, city noise. This was the dream. A place where we could hear crickets at night and not traffic, where no one knocked unless they were dropping off pie or needing jumper cables. At least, that's what we thought. The first sign something was off came during move-in. We'd barely finished unloading the second U-Haul when a woman with a stiff bob haircut and pastel polo marched down the sidewalk with a clipboard under one arm and a walkie-talkie in the other. "Excuse me," she called out sharply before we could even say hello. "Are you the new residents of 1079 Briar Ridge?" My wife wiped her forehead with her sleeve and nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am. Lauren and David Temple." The woman didn't smile, didn't introduce herself, just lifted the clipboard like it was a badge and scanned the top page. "This driveway slope is non-compliant. Code Section 4.3b, and the grass height violates transition period guidelines." I stared at her, unsure if she was serious. We'd been here for 5 hours. Our furniture was still on the lawn. The grass had been cut last week by the realtor's crew. Lauren, to her credit, just nodded once. "Got it. We'll look into that." But the woman wasn't done. She lowered the clipboard and offered a tight, practiced smile. "I'm Karen Sloan, HOA compliance lead. We run a tight ship here, Mrs. Temple. No exceptions. I suggest you review the handbook we emailed you last week. Page 8, especially. Vehicle storage guidelines." Then she turned and walked off like a district attorney leaving court. Lauren said nothing for a long moment, just stared after her, then looked at me. "Do you smell that?" she asked. I frowned. "What?" She smirked. "Control issues. Smells like stale perfume and unchecked ego." I laughed. At the time, I thought that would be the end of it. But that was just Karen's opening move. Within days, we started receiving notices. First, a written warning about unsightly equipment, referring to a folded ladder visible behind the side fence. Then a citation for a non-regulation mailbox, followed by a reminder that our trash bins needed to be stored out of public view at all times, even though the pickup was that same morning. We shrugged it off at first, figured maybe this HOA was just overzealous. But Lauren's instincts had always been sharper than mine. "She's trying to provoke us," she said one night, holding the latest violation between her fingers like it might catch fire. "She doesn't know how to handle people she can't intimidate." I didn't want to believe that. Karen seemed annoying, sure, but dangerous, manipulative. We were just two quiet homeowners trying to settle in. Then came the petition. Karen went door to door collecting signatures claiming our property was a threat to community standards. She framed it as a noise and safety concern due to unknown activity in our detached garage. Never mind that Lauren used it as a ceramics studio, and I stored old tools from my grandfather. It was a smear campaign, thinly veiled, barely legal, and absolutely malicious. And yet, it worked. We noticed the shift almost overnight. Neighbors stopped waving. Kids who'd once played on our curb suddenly turned and walked the other way. One afternoon, I saw Mr. Harris from 3 doors down standing with Karen on his front steps, pointing toward our house like it had a siren on top. Lauren, meanwhile, remained unshaken, unbothered even, but I could see the fire behind her eyes growing hotter. She started printing copies of every notice, filing every letter, logging every interaction, quiet, methodical, patient. "She's baiting us," she said. "She wants an outburst, a moment of anger, something she can twist." But Lauren never gave her one. What? That Karen didn't know, and what even I didn't fully appreciate until much later, was that Lauren had spent the last 7 years working in military legal operations. Her last duty station? Fort Belvoir, where she assisted federal investigations into housing fraud and misuse of local authority. Karen thought she was playing neighborhood politics. Lauren was preparing for a legal war. And 2 weeks later, when Karen stood outside our fence threatening citations and shouting about forced compliance, Lauren stepped out with the trump card she'd been holding all along. The gate clicked shut behind her, and Karen's world was about to change. What would you have done in Lauren's place? Drop your take in the comments. This is AS Stories, where the calm ones come prepared. Karen didn't take that warrant well. She stood there on the other side of the gate, staring at the document in her hand like it had personally insulted her ancestors. Her jaw clenched, nostrils flaring. But the one thing she didn't do? She didn't speak. Not right away. She just blinked, lips twitching, eyes darting across the signature line like she was trying to will it into disappearing. Lauren didn't flinch, didn't smile. She just turned and walked back to the porch, her bare feet brushing across the concrete like the moment hadn't even happened. Karen didn't know it yet, but that signature belonged to a federal magistrate. And the warrant wasn't just a scare tactic. It was a temporary restraining order, enforceable, filed and triggered the moment Karen stepped beyond the front boundary of our property line again. She had 48 hours to comply with the order. But in typical Karen fashion, she didn't back off. She doubled down. The next morning, we woke up to the sound of hammering outside our window. I rushed out in a t-shirt and flannel pants, only to find 2 men in yellow vests installing a fresh code violation notice sign right on our fence post. Bright red lettering, laminated. Lauren leaned against the porch railing beside me, sipping her coffee like it was any other Tuesday. "Let her," she said quietly. "Every step she takes now just adds weight to our case." I looked at her. "Aren't we supposed to report this?" Lauren didn't take her eyes off the workers. "Already did. County Records Office. And I sent a copy of the TRO to the HOA board and their legal counsel." She tapped her phone screen and showed me the delivery confirmation email. "She's not just violating a neighbor's privacy anymore," she added. "She's breaching a court order." By Thursday, Karen had lost what little composure she had left. She came back with a security contractor, one of those private firms with navy blue polos and shiny boots. Big man, arms crossed, mirrored sunglasses. I watched them from the upstairs bedroom as they walked the edge of our property, measuring, marking, whispering. Lauren was already one step ahead. She called the County Code Enforcement Department. Again. "Let them install it," she told the inspector. "Just make sure you bring your own surveyor. I want it on record when they drive one nail into land they don't own." She was quiet on the phone, firm, professional, but I could tell from the grip on her mug that she was tired. Not defeated, just done playing defense. That night, she finally opened the manila folder on the kitchen counter and slid it toward me. Inside were copies of everything. The HOA charter, Karen's email complaints, all downloaded, time-stamped, photos of Karen trespassing, witness statements from 2 neighbors, and the kicker, a notarized letter from the PLST. Previous owner confirming Karen had tried to buy our house 3 years ago and lost the bid to us by $9,000. "She's not protecting property values," Lauren said. "She's bitter." "About losing the house?" I asked. Lauren nodded. "And about losing control." The following Monday, we received a formal invitation to attend an emergency HOA disciplinary hearing. Karen's email was polite, on paper, but every word dripped with smug triumph. "We have received multiple reports of non-compliance with community standards. We'd like to discuss a resolution in person." Lauren didn't blink. "We'll be there." I wanted to argue. I really did. I didn't see the point in showing up just to be outnumbered in a room full of Karen's cronies. But Lauren knew better. She wanted them to speak, on record. And when we arrived at the community hall that Wednesday evening, she brought 3 things with her: a voice recorder, legal in our state with single-party consent; the original restraining order; a sealed envelope addressed to the HOA board's legal department. Karen opened the meeting with her usual flair. She wore a pale lavender blazer, pearls, her clipboard tucked under one arm like it was a holy relic. She stood at the front of the room beneath a large HOA banner, eyes scanning us with that superior little smile she always wore when she thought she was winning. "I'd like to begin by thanking everyone for attending," she said, "and I'd like to personally apologize to the residents affected by the recent disturbances caused by our new neighbors." Gasps from the crowd, a few nods. Karen continued. "We are here to maintain order, respect, and safety. And unfortunately, some individuals believe they are above those values." She gestured to us. "Mr. and Mrs. Temple have shown repeated disregard for our regulations, unauthorized fencing, loud construction work, questionable gear, rage activity, and as of this week, formal legal threats toward this very board." She paused for effect, then looked to Lauren. "Would you like to explain yourself?" Lauren stood up slowly, calmly, like she'd rehearsed it in her mind a dozen times. She placed a printed packet on the table, one for each board member. Then she pressed play on the voice recorder and let Karen's previous threat play out in full volume. "You keep pushing, and I'll bury you in fines until you have no choice but to move." The room went silent. Dead silent. Even Karen froze. Lauren didn't yell, didn't gloat. She simply said, "That was recorded 6 days ago, on our porch, during a violation of the restraining order filed in this packet." Then she handed over the envelope. Inside were court-stamped documents, photographic evidence, and the contact info for her former commanding officer. The board members flipped through the papers like they were holding live grenades. Karen's face turned from confident to cracked porcelain. Her voice, when it returned, was shaky. This is a setup." Lauren tilted her head. "No, Karen. This is accountability. Ever seen a bully exposed on their own turf? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with HOA tyranny, tell us your story. You're watching AS Stories. We don't just fight back. We fight smart. Karen didn't even make it to the second paragraph of her rebuttal. She'd just started reading from a wrinkled sheet of paper, voice trembling, eyes darting between board members, when Lauren quietly slid another document across the table. It was a printed screenshot from the HOA's internal complaint system, with Karen's full name on top, and a note she thought she'd deleted. If we pile on enough fines, they'll cave or move. Either way, I win. The room shifted. The HOA vice president, a man named Raymond with salt and pepper hair and a reputation for avoiding conflict, leaned back slowly in his chair, lips pressed thin. Karen froze mid-sentence. Lauren didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence did what no shouting match ever could. And then it happened. Karen snapped. She slammed her palm on the table, startling half the board. Her paper fluttered to the floor. "You think this is justice?" she hissed. "You're letting them weaponize technicalities, disrespect everything this community stands for?" Raymond raised a hand. "Karen, no!" she barked, eyes wild. "I have kept this street clean for 12 years. I have made sure families felt safe, that property values stayed high. And now, because some clipboard-chasing attorney with a husband who builds birdhouses for a living wants to play lawyer." Lauren blinked once. "I'm a federal compliance officer, Karen," she said flatly. The words hit harder than any insult. The silence that followed was deep and cold. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. It was like watching a woman unravel in real time. And then she pointed, actually pointed, right at Lauren's face. "This is manipulation. This is defamation. They've hacked my account. This whole thing is fake, a setup. You're all falling for it." Raymond didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at the board members around him. Then to the small crowd that had gathered in the back of the room. Neighbors, residents, even a local blogger scribbling notes on a legal pad. One of them, Mrs. Chang from 3 doors down, spoke up softly. "I saw her taking pictures of their house at midnight last week," she said. "My security camera caught it. I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding." Then Mr. Bellows, a quiet older man who rarely spoke at meetings, added, "She's been doing this for years. We just never said anything." Karen spun around to face the room, betrayal washing over her like acid. "You ungrateful—" She didn't finish the sentence. Because at that moment, the HOA board's legal representative, Deborah Worthington, a woman with horn-rimmed glasses and a reputation for handling disputes like disarming bombs, cleared her throat. "Karen," she said, calm but clipped, "we've reviewed the restraining order, the audio recordings, and the timestamps on your internal memos. You are in clear violation of multiple ethical codes outlined in our HOA charter." Karen's face paled. "You'll be placed on immediate administrative leave," Deborah continued, folding her hands neatly, "pending full investigation." Karen's breath caught in her throat. Lauren stood, not with triumph, but with composure. "I don't want her punished," she said to the board. "I want her removed, permanently. This isn't about fines, it's about trust, and none of us can trust her again." The crowd murmured. Several heads nodded. Raymond looked around the room, then finally spoke the words that would shift the entire neighborhood's future. "All in favor of removing Karen Sloan from her position as compliance officer." 8 hands went up. Unanimous. Karen staggered back from the table, shaking her head in disbelief. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "You'll all regret this." Lauren just stared at her. Calm. Measured. "No, Karen," she said, her voice low. "This neighborhood is finally breathing for the first time in years." And with that, Karen stormed out of the meeting room, the door slamming behind her like a gavel on the final verdict. Ever watched the loudest voice in the room lose its echo? Drop your favorite moment below, and if you've ever seen a tyrant fall, tell us how it happened. This is AS Stories, where justice doesn't need to shout. It just shows up with paperwork. We thought it was over. For 3 days, Briar Ridge Lane was unusually quiet. No warnings taped to. No mailboxes. No HOA memos in our inbox. No pink blazers stalking the sidewalk with a measuring tape and manufactured outrage. Karen had vanished. Windows shuttered, curtains drawn. Not even the dog barked. It should have felt like peace returning. But Lauren was watching the silence like a soldier studying a ridgeline. "She's not done," she murmured, scanning a zoning map at the kitchen table. "People like her don't go quiet unless they're loading something worse." I wanted to believe she was wrong. I really did. But Lauren had that look again, the same one she wore on deployment the night before a base got hit. Turns out, she was right. On Friday morning, I pulled into the driveway and found a large orange sticker plastered across our garage. "Pending code enforcement investigation, use of structure suspended." I froze, then looked to the front door. Another notice, bright red this time. "Non-compliant outdoor lighting. Hearing notice issued." Then the mailbox, a thick envelope containing 7 more violations, most of them worded to sound urgent, dangerous, or criminal. Lauren came outside slowly, hands in her jacket pockets. She looked at each paper, read them in silence, and then she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile I'd seen her wear once in Germany when a logistics officer tried to pull rank over her and ended up apologizing in front of a general. "This is Karen's last card," she said. "Sabotage by paperwork." By 10:00 a.m., 3 different municipal departments had shown up. Code enforcement, environmental compliance, and zoning. Karen had filed multiple complaints with the city, alleging illegal renovations, noise pollution, and even misuse of federal funds. She claimed we were running an unlicensed federal operation out of the detached garage, which, for the record, contained nothing more than Lauren's pottery wheels and my granddad's toolbox. The inspectors were polite but embarrassed. They'd clearly been through this before. One even shook my hand quietly and muttered, "We've seen this tactic from HOA people. Never seen it done this badly." Lauren didn't get angry. She got methodical. She offered documentation, architectural drawings, proof of permitted work, even an invitation to inspect the studio. Then, once they left, she opened her laptop and began building something she called the binder. Not digital, printed, tabbed, numbered. One section for every violation we'd ever received. Photos, timestamps, legal responses, witness affidavits. And then, the final section. Evidence of targeted harassment by a removed HOA officer. She delivered the binder to 2 places. The office of the HOA board president, the office of city council member Carla Jimenez, who, as luck would have it, was already sponsoring a measure to investigate abuse of power within HOAs. Lauren didn't just want Karen quiet. She wanted the system to change so that another family wouldn't walk into the same trap we had. But Karen wasn't done just yet. That Sunday night, just past midnight, I heard something outside. A soft crunch on the gravel. I slipped out of bed and moved to the window. And there she was. Karen. Alone. No clipboard. No phone. Just standing at our front gate, arms crossed, staring through the bars like she was trying to burn a hole through our door. Then she stepped closer and slid something through the bottom of the gate. A white envelope. Lauren was already behind me, watching. We didn't move, didn't open the door. The envelope sat there for 2 hours before I finally walked out and picked it up with gloves. Inside? A handwritten letter, 2 pages long. The first was venom. Accusations of manipulation, warnings of reputational damage, legal threats wrapped in desperation. But the second page, that's where her mask slipped. You think you've won, but this was never about the violations. This was about respect, about people knowing who's in charge, about rules, about control. You don't belong here. You never did. People like you think you can change things, but the system doesn't change. It waits. Lauren read the letter once, then she opened her own envelope. A sealed complaint, addressed to the State Licensing Board for Real Estate and Community Governance. It included evidence of Karen falsifying reports, her direct tampering with city records, and a notarized statement from a former HOA treasurer detailing how Karen had been altering voting tallies on rule enforcement cases for years. We mailed the complaint the next morning. Ever seen someone write their own downfall in cursive? Tell us what you'd do with that letter. This is AS Stories, where silence is a strategy, and paper cuts are lethal. It didn't happen with a bang. There was no grand arrest, no dramatic scene on the sidewalk. Karen's downfall came quietly, the same way she used to patrol the block after dark, looking for a trash bin out of place or a porch light left on. Except now, the neighborhood was watching her, and they weren't silent anymore. 2 weeks after Lauren filed the complaint, we started noticing subtle shifts. The city didn't just open an investigation, they froze every HOA-related permit associated with Karen's signature. Vendors began backing out of their contracts. 2 members of the HOA board quietly resigned, and then, one afternoon, we got a phone call from Carla Jimenez's office, the city councilwoman. "Mrs. Temple," the aide said, "your documentation was thorough. The council would like to invite you to speak at next month's hearing on HOA regulatory reform." Lauren stared at the phone like it had grown wings. "I'm not a politician," she said. The aide replied, "You're something better. You're proof." That same weekend, Karen's house went dark. No lights, no movement. By Monday, a for sale sign stood in the front yard. White vinyl. No HOA seal. Just a handwritten addition taped to the bottom. Shown by appointment only. Please respect privacy. The HOA called a special meeting the following week. We weren't sure if we should attend. But when we pulled up to the community center, the parking lot was full. People we barely knew were standing outside, waiting. Mr. Bellows waved us in. Mrs. Chang hugged Lauren and handed her a small bouquet of daisies from her garden. Inside, the mood was different. No folding chairs arranged in tight, uncomfortable rows. No clipboards or printed violation packets. Just neighbors. People. Raymond stood at the front, microphone in hand, clearing his throat. "For those of you who don't know," he began, "Karen Sloan officially resigned from all HOA duties last week, effective immediately. Her name has been removed from all accounts, and the board has filed a formal disassociation notice with the city." Murmurs. Nods. He continued, "We owe some people in this room an apology." Then he turned to us. "David, Lauren, we're sorry." What followed wasn't a celebration. It was something quieter, something better. People spoke, briefly, nervously at first, then more openly. About the fear they'd felt, the fines they'd paid, the nights they'd walked on eggshells just to avoid Karen's attention. One neighbor confessed he'd been fined for illegal mulch coloration. Another revealed that Karen had accused his daughter of conduct unbecoming a minor for having friends over past 8 o'clock p.m. Lauren listened to every word, then finally stood up. "I don't need an apology," she said, voice steady. "But I do need a promise that this place doesn't go back to silence." She paused, scanning the room. Community isn't built on rules. It's built on people, on trust, on the ability to say something's wrong without being punished for it. Someone clapped. Then a few more. Raymond nodded. "We'd like to form a new committee, a transparency council, volunteer-based." Mrs. Chang raised her hand. "I'm in." Mr. Bellows. "Me too." Raymond looked at Lauren. "Would you consider leading it?" Lauren shook her head with a smile. "Let someone else lead. I'll build the spreadsheet." Everyone laughed. That spring, everything changed. Karen's house sold. Not at a loss, but not at the premium she once bragged about either. The new family moved in with 2 toddlers and a golden retriever that loved to dig. No one said a word. The mailbox colors were no longer uniform. Someone added a birdhouse. Another neighbor put in a little free library at the corner. And one sunny Saturday morning, we hosted the first backyard breakfast potluck at our house. 22 families came. The same garage Karen once tried to shut down was now open, filled with folding tables and homemade baked goods. Kids played on the lawn. A jazz playlist hummed through a Bluetooth speaker. Someone brought lawn chairs. Someone else brought a watermelon they carved into a basket. Lauren stood near the fence with a lemonade in hand when one of the neighbors asked her the question I'd been expecting. "Why didn't you just leave?" Lauren didn't hesitate. "Because if we had," she said, "she'd still be in charge." 2 months later, I noticed something new at the edge of our gate. A small wooden sign, staked into the ground where Karen once screamed about lighting codes. Laser-etched, clean and subtle. Respect is not enforced. It's earned. LT, I didn't ask when Lauren had put it there. I just nodded. "Ever seen a street breathe again? Let me know your thoughts. And if you've ever lived near a Karen, tell us how you handled it." This is AS Stories, where the quiet ones don't just survive, they rebuild.